Good evening. It's great to see everyone out this beautiful, beautiful evening. I guess I wouldn't say this very often, but there's a lot of things that happen around this congregation at times that you may just not see or notice at times. We were just in a meeting with the elders for about, 2.5 hours, 3 hours? Felt longer, right? No, in fact, the main reason I bring it up is because every time I have the opportunities like that, I truly do want you to know how much care has gone into just each and every day. To spend time with such men, the elders here who love this congregation deeply. It's a blessing and an honor to be on staff to minister alongside of them in many ways. Even though we may be here a lot of the days, the things that we are privileged to hear, the love that they have for the members, the prayers that go up for you all, there are moments I just wish you could share in also. It's a true honor to have spent that time. While we can joke about the length of the meetings, but the reality is just because there's so much great things happening here. There's so many wonderful things that are on the horizon that it takes time. And the beauty of it is that these men make the time. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for those moments. But in the same light, I rushed up here and I don't have the headphone on. So here I am, stuck behind this table tonight. This is going to be interesting for me because I think you know I'm a wanderer. I like to wander around at times, so this will be fun. So if I randomly start going like this, just keep me back centered, okay? I'm grateful for opportunities like this, opportunities to continue in our series that we're in 1 Peter. I'm grateful that we had a little switch a couple of weeks ago when I was traveling out of town. And so my original notes that I started to make for this lesson started back about a month and a half ago. And as I relived them and kind of spent some time in them, not just this afternoon, but yesterday and the rest, little moments and stories started popping up in my head. The title that was given to me is Sojourners and Exiles from 1 Peter chapter 2. Can I be candid with you? I've felt like a sojourner in exile most of my life. In fact, growing up in Italy, I was the American. And then I moved back to the States and I was the Italian. And no matter where I went, I seemed to belong to somewhere else. And so I feel this more than others, but there are specific moments that I remember in life, and I remember the first time that I stepped foot out into a marketplace in China. And I realized I was the only one over the height of 5'4". And walking around, I felt ginormous. I felt like a giant. And then the moment hit me when I stood waiting to cross the street. Very calmly, I had my headphones in because the sounds and noises of a city with 13 million people, a city you've never heard of called Wuhan, China. And I had these headphones on. And I was just trying to drown out the noise. And I literally watched a finger come out of nowhere slowly and poke me in the face. And I slowly did what a lot of people would do in that moment, where you look at the finger and it just kept coming. And I finally just turned and looked. And there was a very, very small Chinese man, had to have been in his 70s or 80s, looking up at me. And then he just goes, "Ho, Zhongguoren," which means, "Ho, foreign devil." And I went, well, that's fair. Not from here. I don't really belong here in a lot of ways. In fact, at that time, from our knowledge, I was one of 40 foreigners in the entire city of 8.5 million to 13 million, depending on the outskirts of the city. In fact, there were moments where I would look in the distance and I would see somebody that was also taller than 5'4", and I would go, "A foreigner, one of us." And we would see each other, and I remember the moment, in fact, I looked across this thing, and this guy looked over at me and goes, "Oh," and started waving, and I was like, "Yes, me too. We are all so different." And it was so awkward, because then everybody turned to look at us, and suddenly we were like, okay, we're going to go back to trying to hide again. Those moments of standing out, of being completely different in a culture and a place where I couldn't hide. In fact, I know it's hard to believe, but my beard was actually longer than it was right now at that time. My hair was longer than it was right now at that time. And I was jokingly referred to on campus as the Lion. In fact, that was my nickname for most of my years there. The students lovingly and affectionately gave me that. I preferred it to Foreign Devil, so I took Lion at a much better understanding. There was a moment, a night, where standing out became the problem for me, though. You see, I was working with underground churches. I was working with house churches in China. There was about 15 or 20 in the city of Wuhan that we had helped establish over about a 2-year period. And one night I went out to eat noodles. I ate noodles most nights. In fact, it was probably 5 or 6 times a week. I would go specifically to this shop that was we often called it the Muslim noodle shop. It was owned by a family of Uyghurs, which are Western Chinese Muslim, and they are typically the ones you find in the news quite a bit for having a fairly high persecution rate in China. They're also the only ones who are allowed to have more than one child, although China has recently changed to a 1-to-1 policy. If you're an only child, you can have 2 children. If you're one of 2 children, you can only have 1, because they were actually decreasing in population and it became a problem. When your family name is only passed down through the male and all you have is males, what are you missing in life? Females. You're missing people to marry and to continue on, and so they started changing the policy. The Uyghurs, they had, I think, 9 children. I never could keep count. There were so many of them. But I was their foreigner. In fact, when I would go in there, and they loved having me in there, because if I went in there, then all the students from the local university would come in because they would want to practice their English for free. That was the key thing, because English is a way out of the lowest poverty levels in China if you can speak a second language. And if you have somebody who is a native in that language and they can teach you and they can sit down, it's a great way to make more money in life and to get up and ahead in life. So they would flock in, and it's not an exaggeration to say the entire place that I was in probably should have seated maybe 15 people, but there was a good 50 to 100 on average in there when I would step in and sit down on a little tiny plastic stool, and I would sit down, and within 3 minutes I would have a massive group of students that would come up and go, "May we please practice our English?" And I would always say, "As long as you buy something from the owner." And he loved me. I was his foreigner. I also got a lot of free food through the years. But on this night, as I walked in, I was just going to get my food to go. It's called dabao. I was waiting to get my food to go. So I walked in the doorway. I simply said to the man, I would like my regular order. And he smiled and kind of like, he said, "Dabao? Yeah, I'll take it out with me." Okay. It was cold. It was a cold night. So I sat down on a little stool next to him, so I wasn't at a table, and as I saw the students starting to come in, he actually would turn to them and go, "He's not staying tonight." I loved him for that. A few minutes later, as I'm watching him make, and if you've ever seen it, the noodles that they shake out large and they use all the different things, that's what this place was. It was a beautiful craft. It was an art form of food. A young man came up and started yelling at the owner. I could smell the man from a distance. He was very inebriated. And as he started to yell at the man, I couldn't tell. I could make out little words here and there, but I thought I heard him say, "Give it over now, give it over now." But it didn't feel like he was robbing him or doing anything. And then he shoved the owner, and the owner fell into my lap. And like any respecting person, I stood up to get him off my lap. So I picked him up, and when I stood up, the guy was about this tall, and he looked up at me and goes, "Oh," and runs away. The owner turns around and thanks me, and I was going, no, this was not help. You were sitting on my lap. It was a little awkward trying to get you off. Plus, I thought we were going to break the stool. They're very small stools. I thought it was all going to go bad. About 3 minutes later, the young man comes back with 3 friends. The 3 friends walk over to me and sit and stand right next to me, looking down at me. They're now yelling at the owner some more, and so I stand up just to kind of get out of the way, and it was obvious to me in that moment that his also inebriated friends did not know that I was a foreigner. Their friend had not shared with them that information. So they look at me and start backing away very quickly. And then one of them turned around after I'd seen fear in his eyes a second before, turned around, smiled, and I knew something bad was about to happen. And it hit me, okay, I don't know what just happened, but it's going to happen now. 3 more guys walk in and they stare with me, and they've got knives and pipes and boards. Suddenly, standing out in a crowd was no longer my favorite thing. From the back, the children of the restaurant had heard the commotion out front, and so they yelled, and apparently they had called some of their father's friends. And the next thing I know, as these 6 are walking towards me, another 6 or 8 are coming from around the corner, also ready to defend the restaurant. I was just trying to buy noodles. Nothing heroic about my actions. I didn't want him sitting on my lap. That was it. But to stand out in that moment, a tragic moment. You see, very quickly in the doorway of this place, I found and I looked behind myself, and I did the only thing I could do, which was scream in English to confuse everybody as much as possible. And then anybody who got in my way, I just kind of shoved out of the way as best I could, because when I turned around, I saw about 20 or 30 Chinese girls all lined up behind me, expecting me to make the way out. I was just trying to survive. I saw knives, I saw boards, I saw pipes, I saw all sorts of stuff just in front of me. We made our way out. I managed to get out, and at that point, I was just trying to stop people from beating each other. And then one of my students rushed up to me, and he looked at me, he goes, Mr. Lyon, you must go home, you must leave. I said, why? He said, they will blame you for all of this. And I went, why will they blame me? And he goes, because you're the easy target. You're the foreigner. And I went, he's right. So I left and I walked home, and I didn't even get my noodles. I was home and I was hungry. When I got home is when I realized that I had been hit a few times. I didn't realize it in the moment, but I had some wounds, and I don't know if they were stab wounds or slice wounds or pipe. I don't know to this day. I do know that staph infection is not fun. Also learned that from this event. The next day, our Y-Bon, who was over us, called a meeting for all the foreign teachers to let us know that there had been an incident outside the gate. And maybe you have heard that this had happened. And I was sitting there very quietly going, yeah, I heard about it. And he said, it did not happen. The students made it up to scare away the foreign teachers. And I kind of thought to myself, that's not true. But deciding not to argue it in the moment, I stepped outside of the meeting, and after I went back to him and I said, by the way, it did happen, I was there. And he turned to me and he goes, oh, that makes so much more sense. And I went, why does that make sense? Well, all the students said a lion was attacking everyone. And we were like, we don't have lions in China like that anymore. You were the lion. And I was like, I was just trying to get out of there. And he said, oh yeah, very sad. 3 people die. I said, well, did you just dismiss this a second ago and now you're telling me 3 people died? And he said, it's okay, we have more. And candidly, just heartbroken as I sat there and listened to this whole scenario. Standing out in this moment, my students still refer to me as the lion to this day. I never wanted to stand out in those ways. I wanted to stand out for the good things. I wanted to be known for the good things. And what was ironic is, after the fact, one of the things that we found from the house churches where so many individuals were coming going, we want to talk to the one who helped protect the family. And I was sitting there going, I wasn't trying to protect the family. I was literally trying to survive. There was nothing heroic about the moment. He fell into my lap. I got him up. And they said, that doesn't matter. That doesn't happen in this world. People don't help people that you do not know. And I said, well, I did know him. He was my friend. He was the one who would make food for me, and I loved him and his family. The kids used to come out and they would play with my arm hair because they'd never seen arm hair before, apparently. I never wanted to stand out for those reasons. I wanted to just be a friend to them. To stand out, to be different in a world. And what I realized is in some cultures, in some places, and this is including our culture today, in this place, to simply do the right thing is so countercultural people will turn and go, what is that person? They actually stand for something. Now, I could argue I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was there a lot, though, so the idea that there was the chances of that happening seemed to have been pretty high. In the end, it was a local gang trying to shake him down for his Muslim noodle recipe. That's what it was. Ridiculous, insignificant things. Things that do not matter. And from that moment, the story I just shared is what has galvanized my identity of what it means to stand out, to be different, to be a sojourner, to be an exile in a world where truth and dignity and beauty and life is meant to look different than how everyone else lives. It's meant to look at, like, if somebody were to look at you, they would go, what is so different about them? You see, we have a bad problem in our culture today, and especially in Christian culture, where we constantly try to acclimatize to our culture. We constantly try to find ways in which we can fit in to our culture, where we don't want to stand out. We don't want to be different. And can we be candid? Those who have chosen to be different have chosen all the wrong ways in which to be different. You're either beating people over the head with the Bible or you're silent. As if there was no middle ground where God says, look, I'm just calling you to be different. To be sojourners, exiles. In 1 Peter 3, 1 Peter 2 says this, starting in verse 9, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That is not a small calling. That is not an insignificant calling. That is not something that you and I can sit in this auditorium and go, yeah, that sounds good. Instead, it should be something that inspires you to go, okay, if nobody knows I'm a Christian, am I even living it? If nobody knows outside of me saying it, I go to church. In fact, if they might look at your life, could they not see something different than what they see of their other neighbors? Now, I also know, because I hear the stories from so many of you, of wonderful things that you are doing in your life. So I don't want you to think I'm just beating us all down in this concept of we can do more. What I'm asking is, will you be honest with your own self-evaluation right now? Do people know you are a believer? Do people know you are a Christian? Are you different in the places that you live, in the places that you work, in the places that you live? Do you stand out? Are you a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation? For once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct amongst the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. There's 4 key things I want to leave us with tonight that I want to lay before you. What does it look like to be different in this world? What does it look like to be a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation? It begins with being a people of peace. Can we all agree there's enough conflict in the world? If we, just these people here in this room tonight, could be people of peace instead of people of conflict, our community changes drastically. Changes drastically. And it changes almost overnight when instead of trying to constantly find ourselves as, well, here, no, I know he was wrong and I should tell him he was wrong. Instead, being a people of grace and mercy, being a people of forgiveness. Galatians 5:22 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Matthew 5:9, it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. In Romans 12, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all, over and over and over again, this call to be peacemakers, to be called people of peace. One of the greatest gifts my parents ever gave me as a teenager was my house was the safe place for the kids in the community. My home was always open to my friends. They were welcome to be there. And my mom and dad always made sure that it was a place of peace. Because what I didn't know at the time is that many of my friends didn't have homes that were peaceful. They had homes that had yelling and arguing, and they had division and dissension and all sorts of evils going on. And instead, my home was a place of peace. I was blessed in that. Imagine us being a people where your home alone is a place of peace for those in our community. We also need to be a people of wisdom. We should be people of wisdom. My dad once asked me, he said, when hard times come, who do you turn to? What's the first person that comes to mind? And of course, for me, I said, well, it's you, Dad. And he goes, well, that backfired. That was not my intent, because his actual point was, the person that you first think of when you're in hard times, that's the person that has exemplified wisdom to you in life. Person that you want to call in those moments. Person that you need. Proverbs 4:7 says, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and whatever you get insight. Psalm 111 verse 10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All those who practice it have a good understanding. His praises endure forever. Proverbs 3:13 says, blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding, for the gain from her is better than gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. If we were people of wisdom. In fact, it's one of the key dynamics that we're trying to draw into with 12 questions. We want the people to know that we're not afraid of questions, but not just that, but our God is a God of wisdom. Our God provides answers to the world's problems, to the world's trials. We don't have all the answers to everything, but those who seek constantly will find wisdom. Don't just seek knowledge. You can Google knowledge, but wisdom is when you know what to do with it. When you've walked those paths before, to seek wisdom. The third thing is mercy. When people fall or fail or sin, are we people of mercy? Are we people who forgive when things go hard, or are we people who hold on and grudge? Or are we people who hold on and judge? Those are just as dangerous. Now, there are consequences to sin. We can understand that, right? There are consequences that happen. But at the same time, if we, the church, cannot be people of mercy, then the same mercy we bestow on others is the same mercy that will be bestowed on us. And I don't mean that as a good thing. I mean God is standing at the door, ready to judge. Are we people of mercy? The last one, and you know this one well, is love. Are we a people of love? Now, not the emotional, sentimental concept of love, but the real life choosing of, I choose to love others because my God first loved me. So I'm going to love in the same way that he loved me, sacrificially. I'm going to choose others over myself. I'm going to love them. So what does it mean to be a sojourner in this world? It's to be different, to stand out, because this is not our home. Our home is in heaven. Our home is awaiting for us. In fact, Jesus has said, I have gone to prepare a place for you. But while you're down there, while you're there, yes, you're exiles, you're sojourners. You're not meant to fit in. You're not meant to look like everyone else. And instead, if you will be people of peace and people of wisdom and people of mercy and people of love, you will stand out, so much so that even if they speak evil against you, that they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. One of my favorite quotes is this: the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of those steps. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. believers, Christians who have walked through the depths of sin and who have been made whole by the beautiful grace and mercy of God, who have known trials and tribulations and have arisen from the other side. Beautiful people in this world do not just happen. They happen when we choose to be the people that God has called us to be. Sojourners, exiles in a world, but who stand here knowing in this moment we'll be okay. We have a God who loves us. We have a God who has gone before us to set a place before us. We have a God who will lift us up in the end. Because even if the world should mock us, even if the world should say evil things about us, when they look at who we actually are, they will go, that's a distinct people. That's a beautiful people. How do I become like that? That's the invitation also tonight. And maybe it's a personal one where you are just where you are. Maybe you've fallen into just being here. In fact, one of my other favorite sayings is the world has a way of convincing its prey that it's okay to just be okay. There is no such thing as the average Christian. There is the devout believer who walks with God every day and who seeks to be his will and his purpose in this world. And then can we be honest? There are many who are faking their way through it. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people who aren't struggling and doing their best every day. Don't miss that. But what I'm saying is that there are some, and I hope there's none in here, who may be fooling themselves into thinking that everything is okay, because as long as nobody notices anything, my job, I might have problems in my job if I really acted like a Christian. I might have problems with my family if I really taught them the things that I know to be true. The sacrifices of what it means to be an exiled people are tough, are hard a lot of times. But you're not alone. If you were just to take a moment and look around this room, you would realize you are not alone. You're not alone. So step forth in faith that God will provide, no matter the earthly consequences, to being a sojourner, an exiled in a world that is not our home. Because the one he has gone to prepare for us, that's the home. That's the joy, and that's your invitation tonight. If you have not become a Christian, if you have not put him on through the waters of baptism and washed the sins away, tonight's the night. If you just need the prayers of the church or encouragement, that's also your invitation. If you just need to talk to someone, I know the elders stand at the back in the end. Please spend some time with them. I know for a fact they love you and they want to hear from you about your struggles and how you can do better. How you might be engaged more, not just with this congregation, but in your daily walk with God. Whatever your need may be, will you come as together we stand and as we sing.